everybody, and welcome to the second bonus episode as we lead up to Season 2 of the Potomac RPG podcast, which will be coming up next week. Today, we're going to run through some more highlights of this first season doing the podcast. I hope you enjoy it, and be sure to listen all the way to the end. Got a special surprise that Ben and I did as a little gift for Steve earlier this year, who's running our Avernus campaign. We thought we'd share that with everyone. That said, please enjoy, and let's get into it. My player asked me to help him come up with backstory ideas for him to help him get his character fleshed out and real feeling. He is a human cleric who is part of the knowledge domain. His background is spy. He works as an informant gathering information to sell to the highest bidder. Does anybody have any ideas for his past or interesting reasons why he might have become a cleric or informant? I mean, yeah, this seems ripe for the picking here. There's so many directions that you can go. Matt, what do you think about this? What ideas can you give Adiran?
Yeah, so I have several going sort of from maybe the most mundane to sort of the most fantastic. So, I think, there's kind of, the easy explanation is that, well, I mean, this is it's the family business. They've always been information brokers. Alternatively, you can go the other way, and you can make him an orphan, living on the street, and this is the way he makes money because information is valuable. So this is sort of like Varys from Game of Thrones, right, as his background.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Nice.
Another might be that it's simply a vice of his character. I mean, maybe he has, obsession with a particular type of knowledge or a particular type of information, and he needs to get his fix. I mean, he might be, or she might be, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, could be, into scandalous gossip or a voyeur or something, and really the whole information gathering is just, his way of scratching the itch.
So it's really hard, especially when you, as a DM, when you kind of make something impactful and the players just kind of pull their thumbs out of the experience and just like, I don't care. And it's really hard to give agency if they don't want to. So, and it limits what you can do as a DM. Like, you can't make them feel something. You can't make their characters feel something. But having a physical manifestation of something coming back to haunt them, like Ben said, is excellent. And especially, it doesn't have to just be one. I mean, how depending on how big the population of the city was, there could be a lot of anguished souls that are hunting them. Like, you have a whole horde. But if you want to be a little bit more psychological horror, you could start having them misperceive things. Or if you want more mechanical effects, have them have nightmares. It doesn't necessarily have to be a conscious, regret or consequence, but every time they go to make a long rest, space out different people having nightmares, reoccurring nightmares, seeing the faces of the people, and then bringing back that concept of the faces of the people, that woman with her child, and kind of play into that a bit. And even if depending on how much you want to force it, you could have they have a level of exhaustion, like every other night or something, just to kind of, when they do get a long rest, they're not as rested because they're struggling with this. And it brings the players into wanting to find closure, maybe for a different reason, but they want to find closure in this.
How about you, Sarah? How do you hype yourself up? I mean, I don't think you actually need to hype yourself up, but assuming that you weren't hyped, how would you hype?
I would focus on the stuff that I really enjoyed, especially in this particular campaign. And I think I find it useful, like, because I have Steve to talk to, and sometimes he'll also, like, if I'm having like a tough week or whatever, and I'm like, I love our group in D&D, but maybe that week I'm just so stressed out, like I just don't know if I can bring my A game. And he'll talk to me. He's like, no, you're gonna have a great time. Let's do this. Remember this. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be with my friends. I'll be able to let go. And so I think having someone to maybe talk to with about this is also good. I agree though with Tom. Like, if give it a try. Maybe watch some Game of Thrones episodes or read some Kushiel's Dart or some other like fantasy setting that might get you kind of riled up for it. Try it. If that upswell of the fun it's a wave that just doesn't catch you, talk to the group, because I've said this before. D&D is like sex. Nobody wants you there unenthusiastic and not having a good time. They would rather you just not participate. No, they want you to not be a hostage. Okay, so it's not you. I know you're worried about their feelings, but and they would definitely love to have you there, and they're probably going to be sad that you're not there if you're not feeling it, but they don't want you to be a hostage to that game. It will we're gonna sense that, anyone at the table is gonna sense that, and people would much rather you have fun and do your own thing.
So the feat versus ASI question at level 4. Steve, let's turn to you first on this. Level 4 armor. You were just talking about wanting to play an armor. What do you take?
So I know that the sort of mechanical thought here is always like, you got to get your stats up to like max and then worry about feats unless it's like super on point for developing your build. But here's the other thing I realized. It's a +2 to your stat is a +1 to your rolls. I mean, it's a 20-sided die. It's +1 to that 20-sided die roll. That's cool, but being able to do more stuff always is more interesting to me. Like I like a little more versatility in the things I can do than just being like super awesome good at one thing. Because even if you're super awesome good, you can still, whiff your attack roll or, blast your spell and then, they save or legendary defense on resistance on you or whatever. So to my mind, I think if it's consistent with the idea of the character and what the character's, sort of flow and theme and everything else sort of fits with, I say go for the feat. I love feats. I wish we had more feats.
Yeah.
But I played a lot of 3rd edition. Feats were a big deal. I think feats were one of the most interesting ways to customize a character. I think they went way too far in 3rd edition. Like there were just so many feats and you got like tons of feats all the time. That was probably too much. But when I have the opportunity, I love to take a feat over an ASI unless it's just really suboptimal for my character.
Ben, how about you? We've been playing online for what now, like 8 months or something, since March. So whatever it is, in your mind, when it comes to online play, what's some important things to remember manners wise?
Yeah, I definitely taking turns talking so you're not speaking over people. I mean, Zoom is getting better about, giving one person the spotlight in a conversation versus I don't know, the volume leveling that it does is really good so that you can actually have slightly more real conversations than other platforms do, but it's still terrible. And especially, so we play in Zoom and I Zoom with people that are all East Coast and fairly geographically located. But if you're zooming between East Coast and West Coast or international, I'm sure that just amplifies the problem because you don't get the audio cues and the visual cues, of course, when people start talking or end their it's really weird how much you really depend on those things. You've been building up those cues for all of the years of your life, and then they're suddenly gone.
How are you guys coping with being in hell? It's a little bit like real life, isn't it? We're getting a first row look at it.
It's not the escapism that it was.
We're not escaping anything.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, a higher danger level. Well, I don't know. It's a pretty high danger level, I think, compared to what we've been used to. And,
I mean, we have to deal with some serious moral questions like, should we allow demons to eat babies? I mean, that's a really hard choice to make, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but you have to ask yourself, the demons are going to get the babies anyway, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, you can't stop them from getting the babies, but
they're going to eat.
I think I still feel like I'm trying to play catch up, like I'm in over my head. Like it's like, oh yeah, cool. Sure, we'll do this. Let's get on this. And then I was right before the recording the podcast right now. I was actually building maps and laying out things for our Monday campaign. So I feel like I'm constantly
never
trying to
ending.
play catch up. Yep. It's like a
and
part-time
you've been
job.
doing it for what, like 5 months now, 6, something like that.
Well, between
we started, I believe, the first week of June, because it was actually the week after my daughter was born.
Wow.
Actually, never mind. That would have been the very end of May then. Yeah.
Wow, you started a D&D campaign immediately after having a child. That is brave, my friend.
I have a very understanding wife.
Yes, you do. God bless her. My goodness.
So I don't even know how you couldn't have bleed, no matter what you're playing, whether it's romance and sex and all this or anything else. I mean, storytelling is fundamentally an emotional exercise. We remember stories for the ways they make us feel, whether it's a cool, epic, inspiring moment or something else. So, I think bleed, no matter how veteran you are, always is going to happen to some extent. Hopefully, experience gives you the ability to recognize it and not let it go in the wrong direction. But I feel like it's probably impossible to avoid it altogether.
Oh, what a night last night. We had a death. We lost somebody last night. Ben, your character Porto, unknown what will happen, but as it currently stands, Porto is no more.
Yes.
How are you feeling? How are you coping with the loss of your character, which you had just bought the miniature for?
Yes, the miniature had arrived the day before. I had spent the afternoon taking pictures of him, finding a suitable background from the Rainbow Goblins book, and sending it out to the group saying, "Oh, look at the miniature. He's awesome."
Oh, it's such bad timing. And Matt, your character.
Well, it wasn't just Ben's character. I mean, my character came pretty close last night.
He did.
I got dropped to 0 with a Dretch, I just
ready to pounce.
Ready to pounce.
It was a brutal combat.
The hard fight, yeah.
It was. But, as we told Steve last night, it's nice to have battles that have consequences, that have something at stake. And luckily, Ben, Porto is a warlock, and as a warlock, you have access to some otherworldly stuff that can kind of make things interesting in terms of your character death. So hopefully this is not the last we've seen of Porto, but as of right now, we are not doing well. we are losing at D&D. Was that an intentional choice on your part, or did that character just happen to be female?
Just happened to be female.
Which is the best way, right?
Yeah,
that's great. That it's almost an afterthought, right?
Yeah, it was basically because one thing I do is I kind of mill around with different character ideas, concepts, classes, races, anything, and I normally will start with like a picture or like some sort of artist rendition or portrait, and try to create my own headcanon of who that person is, and then I build out from there. So I basically was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I was like, oh, this character, and started kind of building the character from just different images. D&D characters, bards. I knew I was going to play a bard to some capacity, and I found one that I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And it kind of clicked. It just the ideas flowed and the character kind of built themselves. And it was so easy that I was like, okay, yeah, that's the character I went with.
I guess the first fantasy novel that I ever read was probably I was in 4th grade, and it was A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula.
Oh yeah, classic.
And I'm going to actually still say that's my favorite book, ever. And it's not really, and it's not really an RPG-ish world at all for those of you who are familiar with it. But it was kind of a new thing for me. It kind of set up, it was sort of this, it kind of opened doors in my mind, is how I would describe it. And I didn't really get into RPGs until a few years later, until I guess I was like 11 or 12 or something like that. And at that time, I had started reading I had started reading other books, and I had started reading Dragonlance novels and things like that. But weirdly enough, I had only played Dungeons and Dragons a little bit, and actually the game I played the most of when I was that age was actually Robotech, of all things, with the not so great Palladium system.
So
but it was
when you found Wizards of Earthsea, I mean, so my first fantasy novel I picked up was the first book of the Lord of the Rings, which is, I know, Adam's favorite series.
My favorite, absolutely.
And I did this to myself in I was in grade 3 or 4, probably in that, but it was one of those did you guys have those Scholastic book fairs growing up, or maybe this is just a Canadian thing where so you guys had this, yeah.
Americans used to read.
Yeah, fair enough. I just maybe the name wouldn't have been the same or something, but that was I saw that, and it was like the first printing of an edition where they were the books were like mostly white, but they had these like bands of gold with this like elvish script on it and a very evocative sort of cover page. Yeah. And of course, that just drew my attention in, right? And so that I was just wondering, Matt, like, how did you come across Wizard of Earthsea? Did someone recommend it to you? Library?
It was in school. No, it was in school. I'm trying to remember. So Lord of the Rings, I probably read like a year, like something. I'm trying to remember, or The Hobbit, I probably read first. But it was around the same time, but I think after. But Wizard of Earthsea, I remember I was in 4th grade, Mrs. Nelson's class, and it was the classes at that time, elementary schools at least. They had like in the back, like there was like I remember there being like book like little racks of books for because they wanted the kids to just like read stuff. Like that was the thing. And I remember like that one was there. It's like, this looked interesting. And I remember it was a very like worn I remember the copy was kind of worn. And I remember I don't remember if I had to sign it out. I don't remember what the procedure was as in 4th grade. But I remember reading it, and it was just like wow, and it was accessible. Like that was the thing. It wasn't. And it's really, Ursula K. Le Guin's talents, as a writer is that, she could write some fairly deep subject matter in simple language. As a 4th grader, maybe a slightly precocious 4th grader, but as a 4th grader, I was, I didn't have any trouble with, the novel at all. Yeah. And it still holds up. I've gone back and reread it in my adult life. And it was just one of those things that said, books aren't just sea spot run or my my adventures on vacation with my parents. Like it could be something because that's the thing. When kids, and they teach kids to read, the stuff they teach them is that things they want to be like good and wholesome and crap like that. Yeah. But that's not interesting, and no, so it's when suddenly now there's something different. And you read it and you kind of realize, the power, the power of books, right? That's what it was for me. It was really the power of books.
What do you think, Sarah? Like, do you prefer a sandbox style more than a story driven, specific plot line? I know personally, I'd rather have some direction to kind of build off of rather than trying to come up with plot on my own and then following that through.
So I think the answer I'm going to give isn't going to be as satisfying as you want. For me, I want the illusion of a sandbox, meaning like I could go off and do anything I want.
Is what you want.
This is all like a shared hallucination. Let's face it. But I want the illusion of that sandbox, right? That the world is just big and I could explore anything that I wanted. I don't want to feel like I'm being herded. And it's something too that we have to watch out for too when we're writing like novels and stuff like that. You need to make sure that the reader, it doesn't feel like they're being herded to, or that the story is forced in any way. It has to feel natural. So if the characters have an objective that is meaningful to them, and then if you really want to make it extra fun, put a timer on it. They're gonna be motivated to take care of it and bump into people and do, ask the questions and interview people and all that, and just find out what they need to know to move the story forward. And I think that's when the magic happens, when they are moving the story forward because they're so interested and they have stakes that are on the table, like kids at home, or like they're gonna turn into a pumpkin, or whatever it might be, like, or the the fate of Alderaan, or you know what I'm saying? Like they are going to be motivated to solve it, and I think that's where the magic is. They're motivated, and the DM has the narrative that they're kind of guiding, but it's not obvious. And if there's a point where the DM has to jump in, they send an NPC that kind of like leaks a tip that's going to lead them on to where they need to be without it feeling like they just got nudged so much as invited, if that makes sense, to pursue this new clue.
So to answer your question directly, strictly, it would be based off of the numbers that you can get on like if you look at the player's handbook, page 15, it gives a breakdown of the experience per level. And you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide, where it breaks down, allotted experience per day, recommended per player, and so on and so forth. It would be 22 to 20 in-game days to reach from level 1 to level 10. That's assuming that you're basically giving exactly the amount of experience that is recommended for each adventuring day between long rests. And that would be that many adventuring days. So assuming that it was each adventuring day, in quotes, was a session, you have your encounters within that period, and you would level up at the end of the session. Or not the level up, because there's sometimes takes multiple days, but it would take that many sessions of weekly sessions to level that far up. I can tell you from experience, that's not how it works. I have a group of level 4s, and like I said, I've they've gone leaps and bounds with experience more than I intended, because I was giving little bits of extra experience here and there. I've been running pretty much weekly sessions for a year, and they're only 3/4 of the way through level 7, and that's with a party of 4. If you have a party of 5, you need to count for having even more combat, more monsters, more experience to fill in that multiplier. So you're going to be, it's going to take longer.
Gentlemen, we are seeing a nerd in his natural habitat.
So yeah,
I love you, Tom.
I try. So what I would recommend,
all
if you
the
really
players
want to
are
go
really,
this
really
way,
smart. I love seeing you guys in your element. Go for it.
Well, I think I was definitely excited for you, because long before you were even joining this group, you had talked about wanting to join a group. And I remember you said, well, it's just so hard to find people who, will commit to this on a weekly basis. So it seemed like something that might not ever happen. And then when it did happen, it seemed like kind of a surprise. And it worked out well, because it was, again, like during the time that I'm usually working. So it's not like it was taking away from our time together. Yeah, I mean, I was just glad for you.
Until now. Quarantine. And now it's taking up all the time. But
yeah, I
mean,
it
was nice, because you would go off and do your gig, and most Saturday nights, I spent on my own, and to have a group to kind of eat up that time while doing something that I was really wanting to do. It was nice that it didn't interfere with our relationship at all, because it was during that off time.
Yeah, because like without D&D, you would just probably sit crying in a corner, pining for me while waiting for me to return.
During the game. It's really uncomfortable for everybody else, but
right.
It's
I mean, number one, if you're cannibalizing a corpse, there's a thing that happens with dead bodies where they fill up with methane gas.
Yeah.
So, step one, just go ahead and reach into those guts as you're doing the disembowelment act, ripping through the bottom of their torso into their stomach cavity. Just take out their lower intestine and squeeze out what's in there and just slurp it up.
Oh, God.
You can also take the bladder and maybe pop it over your head and sort of wash your hair with it. Maybe a punch to the gut before you actually dig into the innards will make a really ripping methane fart just come out of the bottom of their colon. And you could do some other stuff also with maybe earwax or I mean, I don't.
You're very on brand, John.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm not a big fan of animal folk in general. I think that animal folk are. So I believe that animal folk should be in a game, in the D&D game, because there are so many people that want to have different animal folks, but I don't think that the approach that is being taken to animal folk is the right way to do it. I would rather have a UA that says animal folk in a general type of character class, perhaps linked to the Fae, and then have the character, the player, describe what type of animal they are, and decide with the DM exactly what type of features, probably picked from different other character races, and go from there, because it's so niche to have an owl folk. Why not a parrot folk?
Yes. Usually it is me killing them because I get bored. For some reason, like my DMs usually almost, and my teammates are really good at protecting my characters. So like even if I tried to off one,
mission.
like she would somehow be okay. But I take that as love and because I have a really, really great group. But yeah, always in the past, it's because I'm like done with the character, and I don't like to just retire them because it feels like a loose thread, so I kill them.
All right. I see that. And the best part is, like, I can't get this thing off of me. And yeah, we'll just say it's a helmet. I can't get this helmet off of me, and I'm comatose. And one suggestion that I really loved and glad that we didn't do was seeing how these two entities behaved with each other before. The idea was to bring said magical item near my helmet to see if it would repulse the helmet off of my head, likely resulting in decapitation if we follow this logic through. Thankfully, I am still alive.
Maybe we could revivify him, though, guys.
Well, like of all the times for Matt not to be there, Matt missed the session last night, and boy, did we need his rationale and thought process last night, because we had some real stinkers. I'm your host and person skipping the AKAs this week because there's way too many people here. Adam.
I'm Ben.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Steve.
I'm Nick.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Tom.
Lots of good memories in these clips. Thanks for listening, everyone. Be sure to check us out on the social medias out there. We're at Potomac RPG, all one word. And check out our merch store at teespring.com/stores/Potomac RPG. We'll have some new season 2 items coming, as well as a sale on all of our season 1 stuff. So thanks to the rest of the Potomac RPG crew and all of our listeners out there for the Potomac RPG podcast. I'm Adam. Until next time, keep those dice rolling, keep those stories coming, and never stop playing. All right, so this is something Ben and I put together for Steve as a little gift for his Descent into Avernus campaign that he's running. This is the Song of El Terrell. You may have heard this on YouTube. A bunch of different people have covered the song, but this is Ben and my personal take on it. We had some fun putting it together, thought that we'd share it with everyone else. So enjoy.
Sing a song of El Terrell, of waterwoods and hill, of sundawn on her ruddy cliffs, and fields green and still. land of long abiding joy, home of the strong and brave, renowned by all across the realms, and never once a slave. Oh, sing a song of Elturel when foes are at her door, her fields torn by cloven feet from some infernal shore. Arise, the mighty hell riders, to take up your swift, keen swords and charge into the hellish fray to scatter devils' hordes. Sing a song of Elturel, and when the night does fall, we sleep beneath companions' light until the dawn does call. We're bound by mortal covenant that only ends in death, and so we'll sing of Elturel until